Please join me in Gasho. Naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Sunday service here in Steveston. I guess it's good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're joining from. It's wonderful to have you. You know, at the very beginning of our service, we always start off, it's called the Kansho Bell, and that's what Roy Sensei was bringing for us. And it is actually calling to the community, letting people know that a service is about to begin here and calling them to join us. So I'm glad you're able to hear the bell wherever you are in the distance, that you've heard the calling to come and listen to the Dharma. So together, I'd like to share this time this morning to listen to the Dharma. And we'll begin with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the recitation of the name of the Buddha or the Shomyo. Naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs, naman nobs. So next we will have, we'll start off with a reading, and I'm just going to pull up the screen for those that don't have it with them on the screen or in person. We're going to start off with a reading of our pledge, which you'll see on the screen. If you have it in handy, please bring it out. Our pledge. Breaking out of my shell, I shall carefully share a warm smile and speak gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, or ignorance, I shall be open-minded and act accordingly, just like the calm and peaceful Buddha.
Understand that.
Not putting myself first, I shall share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. Realizing the gift of life we have received, I shall live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who continues to emancipate all. Namandos, namandos, namandos. Sorry, somehow my phone just started recording. I don't know what that was all about. If you may have heard it, possibly not. So we will now go into the sutra chanting, and we will be chanting the Junirai, or the 12 adorations. This chant was actually written by Nagarjuna, or Ryuju Bosatsu, who is the first of the 7 patriarchs in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. So we'll start with this chanting of the Junirai. Namandabs, 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 namandabs. Keshu 族尊在未明はなご無量無視主意ね金色心情如せのシャマタ行如造部両目上脈小蓮華語が将来弥陀尊面前上如満月以後有如千日月小如天空しら語が将来皆尊観音頂戴観地宇宙主寿名相将軍の仏下道負け馬子が将来弥陀尊無微無空後少女修徳下受けず女国小さり役徳自在子が将来弥陀尊実も妙も菩薩衆無量小魔女さな一生主女が力じ子が将来弥陀尊根体保険自所下前言少女名大座おいざ上如せのおが将来弥陀尊実も将来勝負し権限人図し安楽戦後尊厳上具行子が将来弥陀尊小無常無我と薬如水がずねよろ一種世も無明寺子が将来弥陀尊一尊無節無悪名薬無如に悪の主に死心行一尊おが将来弥陀尊一尊無量勉強無少種悪知識 zui song ge dog ji shi zhen me hen yo gai sui shou gya ge zhen gong shou zhou sha se shu yo shou yi gong Namanabs, 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 namanabs. Please join me in the reading of the English translation, which you'll see on your screen if you don't have it with you. Okay. The 12 Adorations, Junirai translation. Before Amida Buddha, whom heavenly beings worship, I humble myself in deepest reverence. In his wondrous land of bliss, surrounded is he by countless bodhisattvas. His golden form shines forth, pure like the king of Mount Sumeru. His practice of truth is steadfast, like an elephant's pace. His eyes radiate like pure blue lotus blossoms. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. His countenance is perfectly pure and round, like the full moon. His majestic light shines like 1,000 suns and moons. His voice is like a heavenly drum, yet like a heavenly bird, Kokila. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Avalokeshvara wears upon his crown the image of Amida adorned with many precious jewels. He subdues the arrogance of demons and heretics. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Incomparable, vast, and pure, his virtues are, clearly extending like vast open space, his act freely benefiting all. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Bodhisattvas from the 10 quarters and countless Maras, demons, always venerate him. He dwells with vow power for the sake of all beings. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. In the golden treasure pond where the lotus flowers bloom, established with goodness is a wondrous throne, where reigns the Buddha like the king of the mounts. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. From the 10 quarters, bodhisattvas come, revealing wondrous powers. They attain blissful state. Honoring his face, they offer eternal homage. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. All things are transient and without self, like the moon on water, lightning, shadow, or the dew. The Dharma cannot be expressed by words, the Buddha proclaimed. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. No words of evil are in his land, no fear of evildoers, no evil paths. With sincere heart, all beings worship him. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. His land of infinite expediencies is without degenerate things or wicked beings. Upon rebirth, non-retrogressive bodhi does one attain. Thus I prostrate myself before Amida Buddha. Thus have I praised the virtues of Amida Buddha. Boundless are they like the water of the seas. Upon receiving these pure and good qualities, may all beings be reborn into his land. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you very much. And now I'm going to ask Roy Sensei today to give our Dharma talk. So without further ado, I'm just going to set up so that he can sit here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to begin my Dharma sharing with you with the words of the Tisarana, the Sanskrit words. The reason I like this is because it brings me back to the days in India, and these are greeting words. So I will read the Tisarana or recite the Tisarana. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Namo. Thank you, everyone, and for coming and joining us for this morning service. And I wish to thank Reverend Grant for asking me to say a few words. My topic is going to be on the word equanimity. And beginning with what I'd like to do is to read to you the words of Taitetsu Unno, who translated the Tanisho. And these words are from his prologue of the Tanisho. It's on page 38, and these are his words. Awakening to Namo Amida Butsu solves difficulties in human relationships, ameliorates hardships and sufferings, provides wise counsel when confronted with difficult choices, inspires timely and compassionate action, transforms sorrow into joy, and gives power to see and criticize false social constructs. Living the Nembutsu with full awareness of human limitedness leads us not to denigrate, but to celebrate life within the boundless wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. Many of us, as we enter our temple, we turn to the left and we enter the Hondo. And as we look towards the Naijin, there are a few prominent features that strike us. Our eyes are cast first upon the Gohonzon, the statue of Amida Buddha. And then in front of the statue is a large table called the Maijoku. And on it we find the candle stand, flower vase, and an incense burner. And perhaps you can't see it because it's behind my back. Behind, or to the side of the Gohonzon, you will find that there is a scroll of Shinran, and it's to your right, looking at the screen. And underneath that, there is also a smaller table, the Wakidan. And on there, you'll find the candle holder, a smaller flower vase, and also an incense burner. And to the left with equal distance from the Gohonzon, the statue, you find the scroll of Renryo. And below that, you see a small table as well. And to the extremes of these two scrolls, you'll find Prince Shotoku, the founder of Buddhism in Japan, the one who brought Buddhism from China. And then to the extreme left, you'll find the 7 patriarchs of Pure Land Buddhism. And so when you look at this very, very carefully, you'll find that there is balance. And in fact, if you were to look at the flowers, especially the one on the Maijoku, the flowers are arranged in such a way that there is balance as well. The form of that flower is in the form of the Bodhi tree leaf. And it's shaped that way. It's purposely designed that way. And you'll find that the number of main flowers are 7, representing the 7 patriarchs of the Pure Land Buddhism. And so there is a purpose in the way that these flowers are arranged, and a purpose in which these are all arranged. And so the question is purpose. And the word that strikes my mind is balance. There is a balance to these. You'll find that there is a distinct spot for each of these adornments. It is the way it is set up. Now, when you come to a major service, which we'll be having tomorrow, the funeral, we're going to set up what we call the white tablecloth, which you see behind me, and this is why I've done preparation already. But the same arrangement will be there, except for a major service, such as Honko or Obon. Then we'll find what we call Gobusoku. And there are 5 then principal adornments in the front. There'll be 2 flowered vases, 2 candles, and the 5th one would be the incense burner. And so what is the symbolism for this balance that we talk about? And if you look at it very carefully, I think it's a reminder. As I enter this hondo on a regular basis, I'm reminded visually of the balance that is there. But how does that balance articulate into my own life, which is, I think, very, very critical? And so first of all, if you look at the 6 senses, you have feeling, touch, smell, sight, sound, and you have the 6th one, which is the mind. The first 5, quite obvious. If you were to touch something very hot, your hand withdraws. If there's something very warm, you tend to want to seek something which is cooler. When there is darkness, you seek for light. And so there is what they call in science, almost like an autonomic response system. With those 5 senses, the body responds. And so there is a balance. We go from darkness to light. We go from heat to coolness. And so there is a balance. But when it comes to the 6th sense, the mind, this is where it becomes very delicate. It becomes very intricate. And there's something in that mind that complicates it for us. And that is the ego. And the ego, as we all know, we all have. Despite what some may say, we all have it. Some have it larger than others, but it's there. And that ego complicates things. And as some people may say, in their vernacular, it messes things up for us. Well, I'm going to not cite too much, just make reference to 2 Buddhist scholars. One is Thich Nhat Hanh, as you people have been studying along with Reverend Grant, and it's in his text, The Heart of Buddha's Teaching. And if you look at one of the chapters, there's reference to the 4 immeasurable minds. These 4 minds are the mind of kindness, the mind of compassion, the mind of joy, and he uses the word equanimity instead of balance. And he defines equanimity as wisdom of equality. Now I'm going to make reference to another person who is a renowned Swiss psychologist. His name is Carl Jung, and some of you have heard of him, maybe some of you have studied him. But this is what he says in one of his texts. He says, even a happy life cannot be without a measure of darkness. And the word happy would lose its meaning if it were not balanced by sadness. It is for the better to take things as they come along with patience and equanimity. Here again, he uses equanimity. Now let me kind of say to ourselves, what does equanimity mean in our daily lives? Well, I have a person that I know very well. And here again, this is a practical example where I think equanimity relates to our lives. This person, about the early 60s, he planted a peach tree. And this peach tree was planted in a very, very secluded place where there was less of the nature affecting it, more sunlight, more warmth, and it was protected. And a peach tree from its very small stages, it takes a while. So I think it was around 4 years that this peach tree began to show its first blossom, and several other blossoms as the weeks went by. So this person, he looked at it very, very carefully, and he said, you know what, this is Tanushimi. There's something that I want to cherish. I want to look after this. And so he pruned the flowers and he looked after it. It was around mid-September that this tree started to bear fruit. And he said he counted about maybe 5 dozen or so peach trees. And peach trees and peaches here in Steveston is very unusual. I mean, it is. I mean, he had a friend in the Okanagan, and he knew this person quite well, and through perhaps that familiarity, he wanted to try to grow this peach tree here. And so one of his sons, the day before, it was on a Saturday, before Dharma school, he said, you know, I think we should maybe pick these peaches because they're so nice and ripe, and let's share it with the family. And so this father said, well, you know, tomorrow is Sunday, and the family's going to gather, so we'll pick the peaches together and we'll share them. And so that was fine. And so the family gathered at Dharma school in the Steveston Temple. They all returned for lunch, which had been a kind of a familiar or a typical pattern for this family. And as one of the family members approached the house, this person noticed that all the peaches were gone. They were all gone. And so the children stepped up, went to the veranda, up into the kitchen, and one of them said, Dad, what happened to those peaches? And the father kind of said, well, this morning I was up around 8:30 or 9, and I went to look at those peaches. And he said, they're all gone. And so one of the children spoke up and said, you mean to tell me they were stolen? And so the father said, well, I don't know whether they were stolen or not, but they're not there. And he said, well, perhaps somebody in the neighborhood or nearby may have picked them. And so the children were kind of dumbfounded and thought, wow, what a response. I mean, goodness, he was looking forward to these peaches, and this is the kind of response, a very stoic, unremorseful response. And as the conversation finished, he then said, you know, I hope that the people who took these peaches are enjoying them, and I hope that they're sweet enough for them. Now that was about 40 years ago, but in the year 1750, there's a similar story, and it's a story about Seikuro of Yamato. So this is 1750, thereabouts. This is when this story took place. Now, Seikuro was a devout Jodo Shinshu follower, and he lived in a small village not far away from Kyoto. And his major income, his occupation, you might say, was to cut logs or trees, make logs, and sell them for firewood. And he did this on a regular basis. And at the same time, what he did was, he's such a devout follower, that he would take the logs, and if they were dirty, he would wash them, clean them, dry them, and then cart them to the honganji. And so the logs were nice and clean, and the honganji then would use it for their fireplace. This is kind of follower he was of Buddhism. And so Seikuro, with his earnings, he kept it in a small container, well away from others so that perhaps it wouldn't be stolen. Well, one day he was out and he came home and he noticed that someone had broken into the house. And some of the items were being ransacked, and he thought, well, I wonder if my container is still there. And he went to look for it, and the container was missing. And so he thought, I guess someone took them. And he left it at that. The next day, he thought he should tell the people in the neighborhood of the village that someone had been around and he had stolen his earnings. And as he closed his remarks with the village people, he said, I do hope that there was enough money for him to make this venture worthwhile. The people in the village, when they heard this, they were really taken by surprise. They were aghast. What? How can a person say that when your hard-earned money has been stolen? And he left it at that. Now, why are these two stories synonymous? And I think it comes back to the word equanimity. Equanimity. Now, if you were to define the word equanimity in the dictionary, the word equanimity is described as balance, non-possessive, being detached from your possessions. And I began to look at my own self. And I said to me and myself, I've got so many inadequacies. If someone were to take the peaches that I had embraced for all those years, I would be upset. Perhaps I would be angry. The case of Seikuro, I'm sure that went through his mind. But he was able to balance that emotion with his ability to see the entire picture, to see it from another perspective. Because, we as ego-laden individuals, we're so passion-laden that we see it from our perspective, but we fail to see it from another perspective. And I think these two gentlemen personified this word equanimity, or the word balance that I prefer to use. And the word balance resounds within me as I enter the Naijin and I see the way that the Naijin is arranged. And so, to me, there is a greater need than just the autonomic response system, where we respond immediately. In our case, it is difficult to respond immediately and to have that balance in our lives. And I know for sure that I have a long ways to go, and that perhaps the only way, in fact, it is not perhaps, the only way to go is for me to listen to the Dharma as often as I can, and to listen to the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. What I would like to do is to close my Dharma sharing with the words of Shinran in his collected works. And it reads as follows: lacking small love and small companion, I cannot hope to benefit sentient beings. Were it not for the ship of Amida's vow, I could not cross the ocean of painful experience. I can only listen to the Nembutsu. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you. Take care, everyone, and be safe.
Thank you, Roy Sensei, for the Dharma talk. This will conclude this Sunday service. I'm just going to turn off